The Biden administration is looking to crack down on the exploitation of migrant children in the U.S. workforce. Last fiscal year, the Labor Department said it found 835 companies had illegally employed more than 3,800 children. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh said in a statement, quote, "This is not a 19th century problem. This is a today problem. We need Congress to come to the table. We need states to come to the table. This is a problem that will take all of us to stop." Let's bring in CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, how do migrant children who've been allowed to be in the U.S., how do they end up falling into these kinds of situations? Where are they being exploited?
Good evening, John. This is really part of a vicious cycle involving desperate teenagers, often from Central America, unscrupulous employers and work sites, and a system that is clearly, John, not efficiently and adequately ensuring the well-being of all these children. For context, most of the unaccompanied children coming to the U.S.-Mexico border in recent years are from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And I've spoken to many of them, John, and many of them tell me that they saw coming to the U.S. and working here as the only way to escape poverty and to lift their families out of poverty back home. And indeed, the number of illegal child labor cases has increased as the number of unaccompanied children arriving to the U.S.-Mexico border has reached record levels. 130,000 unaccompanied children entered the federal shelter system in fiscal year 2022, John. That is a record high. And once these children are released from federal custody, they often end up working in dangerous and grueling jobs that violate federal child labor laws like construction and operating hazardous machines, and also in poultry plants and other sites that are very dangerous for children.
So, Camilo, what's the plan for keeping these children from being exploited?
Well, the Department of Labor and the Department of Health and Human Services, which is the agency that houses unaccompanied children until they can be released to sponsors here in the U.S., announced a series of actions today, John, to crack down on labor exploitation of migrant children. The Department of Labor has committed to increasing investigations of workplaces where there could be child labor exploitation. The Department of Health and Human Services has said that it will review its procedures related to the vetting of sponsors of migrant children. It will also issue guidance, John, to remind children in its custody and prospective sponsors that federal law here in the U.S. prohibits and bars employers from hiring minors to do dangerous jobs. And the administration is also asking Congress to step in, John. They're asking Congress and lawmakers to approve more funding for Department of Labor investigations and to increase the penalties for companies that violate child labor laws. Right now, the maximum penalty for these cases, $15,000, is not sufficiently deterring companies from doing this, according to officials.
Let me switch now to a second topic, Camilo, which is the administration's new limits on asylum seekers. What is different about the new administration position towards asylum, and what do they hope will result from it?
Well, John, this is the most restrictive asylum and migration policy by the Biden administration to date. It will disqualify migrants from asylum if they enter the U.S. in between designated ports of entry after failing to ask for humanitarian protection in a third country like Mexico on their way to the U.S. It's very similar to a regulation that the Trump administration tried to implement back in 2019. The administration says it needs to do this before the Title 42 border restrictions expire on May 11th. That is when the national public health emergency over the coronavirus is set to expire and will trigger the termination of this pandemic-era rule. And the administration says this will discourage illegal border crossings while at the same time encourage migrants to use legal systems to enter the U.S. But advocates and some Democrats are strongly criticizing this, John, mainly because it resembles this Trump administration regulation that the Biden campaign previously condemned.
All right, Camilo Montoya-Galvez in Washington. Thanks so much, Camilo.